you're into Marvel, either the comics or the movies, then you're likely familiar with Wolverine. Played by this man right here, Hugh Jackman, Wolverine has been a mainstay in the Marvel universe. His presence has been felt in 10 different movies that have spanned the last 20 years. But he isn't the only Wolverine in the Marvel universe. You might be wondering, with all the important stories out there, from the Avengers to Punisher, why would I cover a character that many of you may not have heard of? Well, the answer is pretty simple. When I started this YouTube channel, I did it with one purpose: connect the fans of the movies with characters and stories they may not have heard of. In fact, expect many more videos exploring these lesser known characters in the future. So, who is X-23 and why is she important? Well, for starters, you may have seen X-23 after all. Does this look familiar to you?
Laura. No.
Or maybe you used to watch this show as a kid. If either of those scenes ring a bell, then you may be familiar with X-23 after all. However, for those of you who still don't know who she is, let me introduce you. X-23 is Laura Kinney, introduced as a clone of Wolverine. She was created to be the perfect killing machine by an organization called the Facility. Eventually finding her way into the arms of the X-Men, Laura has been climbing the ranks in popularity since her inception. In fact, X-23 is one of my all-time favorite comic book characters. So whether you knew this character coming into the video or not, I really hope you enjoy this story. It's a great origin and I'm excited to share it with you. So enough talk, let's jump into it. This is the story of X-23. The sound of gunfire echoes throughout the halls of a secret underground facility. A man named Rice desperately gathers his belongings as the tortured screams of his co-workers fill the air. Praying that he can escape, Rice grabs his suitcase and bolts it towards the door, the sounds of death closing in around him. Reaching a set of double doors, Rice quickly slams it shut, hoping to gain distance between him and the crazed killer. Before he can pull away from the door, a set of metal claws pierces through the steel doors like butter. Rice manages to quickly duck away from the blades, but not before his lab coat is shredded. Filled with hope upon seeing the exit, Rice sprints to the door. His body fills with adrenaline as he runs for his life. Reaching the cold winter air, he stops to check his surroundings. Panicking, he begins to wonder, am I clear? Did I get away? Rice looks down in shock as 3 large metal claws extend out from his stomach. With the strength leaving his body, he collapses to the ground, the cold, wet snow embracing him as he falls. As the life drains from Rice's body, the man responsible for the chaos shambles off into the winter wasteland, free at last. A few hours later, a helicopter arrives at the scene of the crime. A man steps over to the frozen corpse of Rice and grabs his suitcase. He apologizes for what had just occurred. The man is Martin Sutter, the head of the facility. With a final look of determination, Martin walks back to the helicopter. He knows what he needs to do. Arriving at the home of Rice, Martin approaches his 10-year-old son, Xander Rice. His eyes fill with tears as Martin hands him his father's dog tags. The two embrace as they share a final remembrance of Dale Rice. A now grown-up Xander Rice impatiently barges into the room of Martin Sutter. His attempts at recreating Weapon X are dying, and he needs new samples. Sitting at Martin's desk is a black-haired woman with emerald green eyes. Martin introduces her as Laura Kinney, a leading authority on mutant genetics. She is to help them successfully recreate Weapon X. Xander, with a look of disapproval, steps into the room. As head of surgery, he doesn't want to share managerial duties with anyone. However, after being prompted by Martin, he soon gives in and shakes her hand. It might be best to keep his enemies close. Once he leaves the office, Sarah expresses her immediate dislike of Xander Rice. There's something off with him. Martin quickly shoots her suspicions down. After his father died, he raised Xander as his own son. He wouldn't jeopardize the important work they have planned. Later on, Sarah holds a meeting within the facility's labs, revealing the purpose behind her hire. Being a genetic expert, she is to provide the facility with a clone of Weapon X, the mutant known as Wolverine. They want to create their own monster. However, weeks go by and Sarah is no closer to creating the clone than when her work began. They are simply missing too much genetic material, but an idea crosses her mind. The damage on the Y chromosome is too extensive, but what if they get rid of the Y chromosome and duplicate the perfectly intact X chromosome, creating a female specimen? Although this would not create a perfect genetic twin, it would still be a viable specimen. Realizing that her work so far has been fruitless and risking the wrath of her superiors, Sarah decides to continue the trial of creating the female specimen. As weeks go by, Sarah's progress screeches to a halt. Sample after sample fail before her eyes. With the hope of success slowly draining from her face, Sarah continues to press on. Failure after failure bearing down on her as if the weight of the world rested on her shoulders. Feeling dejected and like a failure herself, Sarah begins to wonder if this is even possible. Cloning Weapon X might just not be feasible. Later that night, Sarah falls asleep at her desk, emotionally drained and sleep deprived. However, she is quickly awakened by the soft red glow from her computer screen. Sarah looks on in shock as she sees the phrase that has escaped her grasp: Sample 23 viable. The very next day, Sarah informs her superiors of her success. Although initially taken back by the change of gender to female, Martin decides to move ahead with the program, much to the annoyance of Xander. Martin tells Xander that it's his job to find a capable woman to be the surrogate to the specimen. With anger in his eyes, Xander says he'll take care of it. Later that night, Xander drunkenly barges into Sarah's room. He tells her that he has chosen her as the surrogate. Sarah quickly declines the offer, but Xander persists. If she doesn't become the surrogate, then her specimen will not survive the night. The ball's in her court. Sarah looks down, defeated. Not wanting her success to go to waste, Sarah begrudgingly agrees to host the baby. No longer the experimenter, Sarah was now part of the experiment, a vessel to be poked and prodded. No longer confined to the laboratory, Sarah was now confined to a new type of prison. Every moment of her day, she was watched and recorded. Xander finally found a way to keep her chained down. There was nothing she could do but submit. As the surgical team surrounds Sarah, Xander prepares to give birth to the facility's next prized possession. As Sarah grits her teeth against the pain, she begins to push as hard as she can, hoping each push will be her last. As the cries of a newborn baby fill the air, Xander looks on in glee. The baby reaches up, unveiling two small claws of bone piercing through her hand. Staring at a set of screens, Martin observes X-23 in action. Only 7 years old, she has already attained peak human condition. Xander explains their current predicament. In order for X-23 to become like Wolverine, they need to lace her bones in adamantium. But she won't survive the surgery. They need her mutation to kick in. Xander tells Martin that he might have a way to prematurely kickstart her mutation, allowing her healing factor to form. Finally, Xander smiles confidently as he confides that he's almost finished his own project, a trigger scent, and it'll make them filthy rich. Later that night, Xander sits alone in his office. With a hint of anger in his gaze, he takes a solemn look at his father's dog tags. He is suddenly interrupted by Rachel, who tells him she just got her pregnancy test back. She's positive. Xander unenthusiastically dismisses her and walks off. In the meantime, X-23 continues to master the art of war, becoming proficient in both hand-to-hand and weapons combat. Each day that passes, she becomes even more deadly. After a hard sparring session, Tanaka, the facility's weapon master, tells X-23 that he's proud of her. A subtle smile forms on her lips. The moment is quickly dashed, however, as Xander tears X-23 away. He has his own special operation for her. Before he leaves, he grudgingly tells Tanaka to never treat her like a child again. She's nothing more than a weapon. As promised, X-23 lays on a surgical table as Xander prepares her for the special operation. One that should kickstart her mutation in as little as a couple of minutes. Once she's locked in place, Xander gives the order to start the process. Sarah, having heard about the operation, runs in and screams at Xander. She had no idea he was going to torture her into mutating early. She never would have allowed this. X-23 screams in agonizing pain as the reality sets in. Xander decided to force her mutation through intense radiation poisoning. The tortured screams fill the air. Sarah's face crumples as tears well up in her emerald green eyes. She stares in horror as the screams surround her like a heavy blanket. That's her progeny, her baby. With the success of the expedited mutation process, Xander prepares X-23 for the final step of the procedure, surgically lacing her claws with adamantium. Before he begins, he commands the surgeons to turn off the anesthesia. He wants her to feel every second of the pain. He leans down, eyes filled with fury, and whispers, "This is for my father." X-23 plays with her retractable foot claw as Xander and Martin discuss the next part of her training. With her healing factor kicked in and her claws laced with one of the hardest metals on the planet, there is only one more test to conclude: the trigger scent. And Xander has the perfect idea. Slipping into the dojo undetected, Xander sprinkles a few drops of the trigger scent on the handle of a sword. Only time will tell of its effectiveness. The next morning, X-23 prepares for her lesson with Tanaka, the weapons master. He reminds her that she has been a wonderful student and today is graduation day. She only needs to complete one more lesson under his tutelage. Ready to begin, he draws his sword. Almost instantly, X-23's eyes begin glowing red, possessed by an incredible desire she cannot explain. Suddenly overcome with uncontrollable, irresistible rage, X-23 brandishes her metal claws and charges Tanaka at full speed. She has become an animal, and he doesn't stand a chance. Screams and hollers roar across the LA Convention Center as Greg Johnson's presidential campaign sweeps through the nation. Amidst the crowd is a young handicapped girl, roughly the age of 10. She sniffs the air as if on the hunt for something or someone. Approaching the security, the little girl asks if she can visit the presidential candidate. Leaning down to her level, the head of security sadly tells her no, resulting in the little girl succumbing to tears. This flags the interest of candidate Johnson's wife, who tells the security to let her on through. Seeing this as an excellent publicity stunt, they decide to run a quick photo op, hoping this would sway the public's perception of candidate Johnson. Greg Johnson's family, along with the little girl, poses for the camera, completely unaware to the inevitability of the situation. As the bodies pile up on the LA convention floor, the little girl is nowhere to be seen. Later on that week, Sarah plans a visit with X-23. She's felt distant from her since she's begun her missions for the facility. Sarah, wanting nothing more than to retain her childhood innocence, asks if she could read to X-23, like she used to when she was a baby. However, before they can begin reclaiming some of her childhood, an envelope passes under the door. X-23 has been called for another assassination mission. Sarah looks on in gloom, as if her baby was being ripped from her arms. In essence, she is. Over the course of the next few months, X-23 begins earning her keep, quickly becoming as infamous as the Winter Soldier. Specializing in assassinations, her services are sold off to the highest bidder. Meanwhile, Martin's wife Rachel approaches Xander in his office. She tells him it's time they told Martin the truth. Their 3-year-old baby isn't his. She can't keep secrets anymore. His patience wearing thin and true colors on full display, Xander grabs Rachel by the throat and threatens her. He's told her 100 times. If she brings this up again, he will kill her. Gunshots soar overhead as X-23 springs from the shuttered windows of a high-rise building. She scurries through the streets below, her mission clock running low on time. Unwilling to have any witnesses to what he's about to do, Xander kills the soldiers accompanying him. It's time for payback. It's time to avenge his father. With 1 minute left on the clock, X-23 arrives at the exfiltration point, just in time. Or so she thought. With one final goodbye and a toss of his father's dog tags, Xander takes off by helicopter, leaving X-23 at the mercy of the enemy. Quickly surrounded by those who wish her dead, X-23 brandishes her claws. If she has to die, she's taking them with her. Now, I know we normally keep the recaps to the final issues of the video, but we're gonna do it a bit different this time. As you may have noticed, there are no rewind sections in this video. The reason is pretty simple. The story is very self-contained. It has almost zero connection with the outside Marvel universe, other than X-23 being based off the genetic material of Wolverine. This story is special because it touches on a really cool theme. Are you a slave to your destiny? Are you stuck walking the path that others have chosen for you? Or is it possible to break free? Think about your own life. Have your parents ever had plans for you? Did you ever feel forced going in one direction when that clearly wasn't your plan? If so, you might have a lot in common with our protagonist here. She's a killer, sure. But in the context of her upbringing, how much responsibility does she really hold? Any? It's an interesting question and one that I probably can't answer. But we still have a few issues to go. So let's get back to the story. Heavy emotion weighs down on Sarah as she sheds a tear for X-23. She wasn't a weapon, not to her. Picking up a photograph of her, Sarah imagines a life where X-23 wasn't special, where she was just an ordinary child. Suddenly, an alarm screeches throughout the facility. Someone has breached the security barrier. As the facility security team raise their weapons, they see a figure cloaked in smoke. Sarah gasps in shock as standing before her is a completely unharmed X-23. Escaping death and finding her way back home, Sarah knows there must be more to the story. Martin Sutter, oblivious to the truth, asks Sarah to handle the debriefing. Why was she deemed killed in action? Xander looks on in complete disarray. Later that night, distraught with the whole situation, Sarah sheds a tear for her current predicament. She never should have took the job. She never should have created X-23. Suddenly, her phone rings. It's her sister, and she's hyperventilating. There's been an emergency. Responding to the panicked phone call, Sarah arrives at her sister's house in San Francisco. Her sister explains that her daughter Megan has gone missing. She was last seen in her bedroom, and she isn't the type to run away. She must have been taken. Luckily for her, Sarah brought the best hope she has of bringing Megan home, X-23. Once in Megan's room, she uses her heightened senses to unravel the mystery. She was indeed kidnapped. Thanks to her mutation, however, she can track the kidnapper's steps, which she does through the busy streets of San Francisco. X-23 eventually tracks the scent to an apartment complex a couple blocks away. Using her unique brand of infiltration skills, she develops a plan to get inside. Peering through the peephole, the man sees a little girl in a school uniform. Confidently, she claims she's selling cookies to raise money for a camping trip. An eerie smile forming on his lips, the man lets the girl in. He tells her to wait there. He needs to grab something from the other room. He begins chuckling to himself as he departs. On the street below, Sarah's friend Kevin asks what's taking so long. Sarah simply tells him to wait for the signal. What signal? As the street erupts in chaos following the accident, X-23 leads Megan to safety. Sarah quickly throws a blanket around her and tells her she's bringing her home to her mom. Back at the facility, Martin and Xander reprimand Sarah for using the weapon for personal use. Martin tells Sarah that she's become a liability. She has grown too emotional over X-23, and her future with the facility is now in question. Martin tells her that they will talk about this in the morning. On the car ride home, Martin unloads onto Xander. He's tired and overworked. He misses his family. This job is taking over his life, and it's time for a change. Martin, relieving himself of his burden, decides to sign away his position at the facility to Xander. He realizes there's nothing more important than family and wants to spend the rest of his life with them. It's time to officially move on. With one final hug to celebrate the matter, Martin whispers, "Good night, son." Driving down the street a ways, Xander stops the car and approaches the trunk. He hands X-23 her mission clock. It's time for her next assassination. Insomnia grips Sarah as she lies in bed contemplating what her life has become. The guilt of her work weighs down on her with incredible force. To calm her nerves, she decides to visit the one person on her mind, X-23. Upon arriving, Sarah is confronted with a shocking twist. X-23 has been inflicting self-harm. With the scars normally healed due to her powers, Sarah knows these cuts are fresh. It's now more clear than ever. X-23 is a slave to her destiny. She's a child trapped in the body of a murderous killing machine. Her self-harm is a cry for help. Just then, Sarah's friend Kevin storms in. Martin and his wife have been killed in a house fire. Their young boy was spared. He was found in the woods behind the house. It all hits Sarah at once. Xander is using X-23 to cut off any loose ends. If they don't get out now, they will be next. Sarah, eyes filling with tears, knows there's only one way out of this mess. She tells X-23 that she has one final mission for her. Later that day, Sarah runs into Xander. He's been waiting for her. He tells her to walk with him. There's something he wants her to see. They approach a large metal door which she immediately recognizes, a restricted laboratory, restricted even to her. As the door opens, her blood runs cold. Lining the walls are hundreds of incubators, hundreds of clones. Xander deftly tells her to not be surprised. The plan was always to make more. Sarah's face drains of all life. The nightmare is growing by the second. X-23 is just the first of many. Xander tells her that she's officially fired from the facility. This was just a warning against her doing anything rash. As she storms off, Xander tells her to go see X-23. This will be the last time she can see her child. He will allow her to say goodbye. Gunshots echo through the air as two guards watching over X-23 drop to the cold, hard floor. The final mission is about to begin. A sealed envelope slides under the door. The mission information lies inside. X-23 calmly walks over and opens the package to reveal the floor plans of the embryo chamber with the words, "Destroy by any means necessary." X-23 also looks down at a photo of her last assassination target, Xander Rice. You know what time it is? Let's recap this. After successful experimentation on the mutant Wolverine, the facility, which is a clandestine organization, tries to recreate this experiment to create a new monster, X-23. X-23 is then farmed out to the highest bidder. If you need someone assassinated and you got the cash, the facility will hook you up. The only issue? Laura Kinney, X-23's mother, who's had a drastic change of heart. She still sees the child locked away within X-23 and desperately wants to free her. But Xander Rice is gonna do everything in his power to make sure that doesn't happen. All right, let's wrap this up. Sarah and Kevin race through the facility's corridors as gunshots erupt around them. They are not leaving without a fight. Unfortunately for Kevin, he isn't leaving at all, as 3 high-powered rounds rip through his midsection in quick succession. Sarah, having no choice, leaves his body behind. She needs to get out now. Meanwhile, Xander receives a call from his security. X-23 has escaped. Fear begins to set in as Xander realizes a monster is on the loose, and there's only one person who could have set her free. In the embryo chamber, one of the scientists checks on the progress of the clones. Everything is moving on schedule. Before he can turn around, 2 large metal claws impale him through the back of the head. He has no time to react. After placing her final explosives on the incubators, the security team catches up with X-23, but little do they know they should have taken the day off. As Sarah waits outside the facility entrance, she begins to wonder where X-23 is. She was hoping she would be finished by now. She looks down at her watch in anticipation. It's only a matter of time before the entire facility comes down on them. Back inside, X-23 forces her way into Xander's room. He's all that's standing between her and freedom. Hiding behind the front door, Xander was prepared for the break-in. He attacks X-23 from behind, sending her flying against the wall. Before he can finish her off, she extends her adamantium-laced foot claw, and in one fell swoop, slices his handgun in 2. She then regains her footing, hitting Xander in the nose with her harder-than-steel fists, breaking half the bones in his face. She then does what she came here to do. Beaten and bloody on the floor, Xander struggles to catch his breath. X-23 takes out his father's dog tags, tossing them to the defeated animal on the ground. Having completed her final mission, she walks off with seconds to spare. Sarah looks on as her wish finally comes true. She has freed her child from this nightmare. She has put an end to Xander's reign of terror. Suddenly, X-23's urges begin to overwhelm her. Sarah looks on in shock as the cruel reality of the situation dawns on her. The trigger scent. Even in death, Xander has won. With blood dripping from her face, X-23 looks down in horror. What has she done? As her life slowly drains from her, Sarah tells her daughter that her real name is Laura, and no matter what, she will always love her. For the first time in her life, Laura begins to cry. She doesn't want to go on without her mother. Not knowing what to do, Laura lies down beside Sarah's lifeless body. She begs her to wake up. She repeats, "Please, don't leave me." As the snow continues to fall, blanketing the land in white, Laura remains curled up beside the woman who gave her life, the woman who freed the child within the animal. A mysterious helicopter lands at the destroyed facility base. A deceased Xander lies amidst the snow. A man dressed in black reaches down and picks something out of Xander's cold, dead hands. He radios to his superiors. The facility is destroyed and everyone is dead, but that's okay. They have everything they need. And there you have it, one of my all-time favorite origin stories. As you can imagine, this story is just the beginning of Laura's journey. We will find her everywhere, from the X-Men to the Black Ops team known as X-Force, and even her own solo series beginning in 2010. Needless to say, there's a lot of X-23 material to cover. So if you're interested in her, leave a comment below and I'll be sure to cover more of her in the future. For now, I hope you enjoyed our latest adventure into the Marvel Universe. Until next time, I'm Nashology, and this is A Marvelous Life.